Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's Planning Committee of the 20th of November 2024. The first item on the agenda, apologies for absence. Are there any apologies? Councillor Brown?
Apologies from Councillor Hamadashi, and I'm a substitute for him.
Thank you. Any more apologies? Councillor Barrett might be running late. Okay, thank you. Right. Item 2 is the records of the meeting held on the 23rd of October 2024, along with the update in the supplementary agenda for reasons for a refusal in relation to planning application 20 Broom Hill Road, approved. Are they approved? Yeah. Item 3, I can confirm that there are no late items which do not appear on the main agenda. Item 4, do any members have any disclosable pecuniary interests or other significant interests? Councillor Etheridge.
Thank you. My usual declaration, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Etheridge. Anyone else? Before moving on to the remainder of the agenda, is it agreed by members that Councillor Spalding speaks as ward member on agenda item 5 and Councillor Patterson speaks as ward member on agenda item 6? Agreed. Thank you. Now for the first planning application, agenda item 5, land to the rear of Fenn House Farm. Madeleine Mead, Principal Planning Officer, will be presenting this application. So over to you, Madeleine.
Thank you, Chair. So this is an outline application with all matters reserved for the construction of 3 self-built dwellings at land rear of Fenn House Farm. So this is a site location plan. Apologies, if I could just draw your attention first to the supplementary agenda. The report refers to the site being in an area of local landscape importance, but this should be a special landscaped area. So this is a site in red. Got the access running up off Fenn Street. It's bounded by a wooded area to the side here, and to the rear it's stables and paddocks, and then agricultural land to the other side. The site is within the countryside and within the special landscaped area, and as you'll see from this application, it just shows the wooded area a bit more clearer. You'll probably be aware as well that permission was granted for 44 dwellings on land here. This is a photo showing the access into the site. It is an existing access. And this is from the field to the west of the site. This shows part of the rear garden of one of the properties in Fenn Street, and this is the application site. This is from the field again at the west of the site, looking towards the rear of the properties in Fenn Street. So this would be their rear garden, one of them. And this is from private access on Newlands Farm Road, looking into the site. And this is the access road to the neighbouring stables with the site on the left. And the northeastern part of the site. So this is a previously approved illustrative block plan for 4 self-built dwellings. So this was granted permission in July 2023, and these were laid out more in a courtyard style development, and this consent can still be implemented. And this application proposes for the 3 self-builds rather than 4 in more of a linear style development. It has a landscape buffer of 4 metres around the majority of the boundary of the site, and this would fall outside of the ownership of the dwellings, so it can be maintained. Overall, it's considered that the dwellings could be laid out to not have a detrimental impact on the neighbouring amenity and would also meet the space standards requirements. The SANS mitigation contribution has already been paid under the previously approved application, and it's not considered that the development will cause sufficient harm to the wider character and functioning of the countryside due to the natural confines of the site. And we're looking for a resolution to approve, subject to completion, of Section 106 agreement to secure the dwellings as self-builds and conditions as set out, and the application is recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Madeline. Now go over to Councillor Spalding, who has 5 minutes to speak as ward member.
Thank you, members. This land previously obtained outline planning permission as stated for 4 small detached self-built dwellings with all matters reserved, including access. That committee didn't have a ward councillor addressing it. That committee did not have the benefit of the knowledge this committee has, knowledge of how many refusals this council has made for such developments, nor how many appeals such developments were denied. Knowledge of exactly how that development contradicts current planning policies. This should be treated as a completely new application. Why is there a new application? Applicants sent me an email the other day asking me to support it, telling me a few things, and they said, yeah, we got permission at 4 small self-built dwellings, but we now want 3 larger ones. Apparently, among other things, they can't sell the plots, very little interest. So instead of 4 small ones, and you saw the diagram up there, if you look at the portal, we see 3 apparently monstrous ones, ginormous, larger. What you don't see in the pictures is the facilities for septic tanks, emptying facilities. There's no main sewage, so I missed that one out. 3 massive houses backing onto existing properties. Policy H9, development only permitted when there's no loss of privacy to adjoining properties. Acceptable access, I'll come on to that in a minute. No increase in noise or disturbance to adjacent residents and traffic. This is another car development-dominated scheme. We went all through this last time with the Fenn corner one. But we're not getting $500,000 in 106 monies, which, remember, was the thing that tipped the balance. In fact, I can't see any mention of any 106 money. Now, turning to access. Access is a reserved matter, so you're being asked to, in principle, is the access shown agreeable? Looking at the plan on the screen, you do not get a true picture. But if you look at the plan on the portal, you should see the access is right by the corner coming off the roundabout. Now, at the last meeting on the Fenn corner application, a road traffic audit prepared for the parish council was presented, raising numerous safety issues about this particular area. Head of planning, you told you everything is fine. Experts have said so. These same experts have now subsequently agreed with the findings of that road safety audit. It's on the Fenn corner portal. There's a technical note. Question for you members, are you convinced the access is safe? Now, the site location plan on the portal is different to the one shown on the presentation. Portal revision A overlaps adjoining properties. Now that's important because condition 4 requires development to be carried out in accordance with revision A plan. Please take a look before making a decision. How can you impose a condition that is physically impossible to adhere to? Let me remind you of policies. BNE 25, development in countryside only permitted if it maintains, enhances character, amenity, function of countryside, and offers access by a range of transport modes, and does not result in volumes of traffic that damage rural amenity. How can 3 houses like this in a car-dominated development comply with BNE 25? It doesn't, in my opinion. 3.4.11 2003 local plan. The council will therefore resist development which would result in damage to the amenity of those people occupying property too close to the new development. My opinion, definitely does. 5.5.22 2000 local plan. New housing development generally be expected to be in keeping with the character of the surrounding neighbourhood. The surrounding properties, cottages, not mansions. BNE 33, been referred to in the supplementary agenda. No new development will be allowed unless it conserves and enhances natural beauty of area or economic social benefits are so important they outweigh the priority to conserve the natural beauty of the area's landscape. Ask yourselves this: what are the economic and social benefits of these 3, some would say, colossal dwellings in a car-dominated proposal? How does this proposal conserve and enhance the natural beauty of the area? They are questions for you, members. Finally, of course, MPPF 11D, presumption in favour unless adverse impacts significantly outweigh when assessed as a whole. Well, we're not getting 50 grand for the bus services on this or 400 grand to education. In fact, I've seen nothing in terms of members. Now, in my view, members, this application should actually be deferred to give the applicant the opportunity to submit an accurate site plan, if so advised, to also amend the application on all matters reserved except access. Let's have the access back and decide it. Otherwise, I suggest and submit you must refuse on the grounds of inadequate and erroneous site plan. Alternatively, should you be minded to approve, then there should be a further condition that all reserved matters, especially the access, come back to committee for determination and not dealt with by delegated powers. Madam Chair, members, once again, I'm obliged for your polite attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Spalding. I now open the floor to members. Any members? Councillor Peake.
Thank you, Chair. Can we just have some idea what the distance is like from the bend before you have the turning into the entrance? How sharp a turn is it? Is there any hindrance to sight view at all, please? If that's the right language, is what you say, sight view? Thank you.
Madeleine, do you want to come back on that?
Is that for the entrance onto Fenn Street? Yes, sorry. That one?
There's sufficient visibility from the access to that corner, so we didn't have any concerns about the visibility displays from this access in that direction.
Thank you, Chair. The reason why I ask, it makes a lot of difference to safety. Obviously, if there is no visual impairment, and also if it's not a sharp turning and it's clear and an easy, smooth round the bend to get into entrance, then that's obviously a lot safer than anything that is abrupt or short that would make cars brake. Thank you.
Councillor Pearce.
Thank you, Chairperson. Yeah, I think the elephant in the room on this application is the fact that last year 4 dwellings was approved. And literally the only change I can see here is that they've changed 4 to 3. And it's literally word for word the 2 applications. The problem is if we do refuse this, I think it's going to be quite a weak argument up against the inspector. It will say, hold on a minute, last year you approved 4, so why are you refusing 3? But also, we've got the houses which are going to be built opposite now as well. So I think because of that, it's sort of tied our hands. I'm looking at this objectively, and if it was refused, it would go to an inspector, and it will probably be within 5 minutes decided on by that inspector because of the history of this site. So I feel like I can't even get into the merits of why it should go ahead or shouldn't go ahead because of that. But to be honest, that Fenn Street does need to be sorted out by the council. The council does need to do some work on that street because it is a nightmare. It's a safety nightmare. But also, listening to the ward council, I think the reserve matters probably will come back to this committee anyway, because I suspect that will be consulted on by residents and the ward council. So I'm happy with that for the reserve matters to come back, and I understand because they're self-build plots, each property will have to be a reserve matter on its own right. But yeah, I can't. It's a small, effectively a small minor change, a reduction in the development. So I can't see a reason to refuse it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Filmer.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairperson. I got that right tonight. I went down today to have a look because it's just down the road from where I live. Regarding the sight line of entering into the site, historically, there used to be a brick wall there where the post box used to be there. Now, that's all changed now. As far as I'm concerned, going from 4 houses down to 3 has got to be a betterment. When you're talking about south builds out in that sort of rural area, no one wants to build a south build that's smaller than, say, 1,600 square feet, and give them the opportunity for a decent-sized garden for the children, because there isn't the play facilities out that way. So, as far as I'm concerned, it's quite a simple decision for me that this is a better application than the one before.
Thank you. Councillor Golvin.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. Whilst an extra three properties is not going to make much of a dent into our shortfall of planning permissions that we need to grant each year. It does make a slightly bigger dent in two other areas. One is that we do not have a very large supply of self-building plots here in Medway, where I think we should have, the planning legislation says we should have considerably more than we do at the moment. And also, it does give the opportunity to have larger properties for people who are aspirational. And that's another thing that is missing in Medway. We're not building very many large houses for those who could afford them. We need to provide a whole range of properties for various needs. The vast majority of the buildings that have come up for permission, and tonight is a classic example of that, the vast majority are flats. We're not building very many family-type homes. The vast majority of the building in Medway at the moment is 1 or 2 bedroom flats, and I think we need to address that as well. And I agree with the last speakers that 3 is much better. It's not going to be such a cramped development, and I can't see any reason why, if this was just entirely on its own merits, that we shouldn't vote for it. But also, as has been mentioned, with the exempt planning permission, really we'd look very, very silly if we turned this one down. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Councillor Galvin. Any other member? No, okay. Yeah, I will be voting for this application because, as been said, there is already permission to build on this land. I will now move over to Vice Chair, Councillor Jones.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chair. There's a reference in the supplementary agenda to the planning appraisal on the site of scientific interest. I assume the clerk has already noted that amendment from the supplementary agenda, so I will proceed with the recommendations. Recommend approval subject to A, the applicant entering into a unilateral undertaking to secure the dwellings as self-builds, and B, conditions 1 to 29 as set out in the report. I so move.
Thank you. Is that seconded?
Seconded.
Thank you, Councillor Bowen. Those for?
That's 14, Chair.
The application is therefore approved. Now moving on to agenda item 6, planning application, Ironmonger Yard. Tom Stubbs, Senior Planner, will be presenting this application. So over to you, Tom.
Thank you, Chairperson. Good evening, members. I'd like to just draw members' attention to the supplementary agenda, which has a couple of variations of conditions on there from the original report, so I just need to consider that. The application in front tonight is a residential-led mixed-use development comprising of residential homes Class C3 and communal and community space Class E and F, together with vehicle access of High Street and Bardell Terrace, and vehicle including on and on-street parking, cycle provision, private amenity space, landscaping, engineering works, public realm, and associated works. This would create 296 flats with a mixture of tenures of build-to-rent, sale, later living, and affordable housing. So this slide helps us set the scene of the development sites. The red areas are the three sections that are going to be developed. And then there was also points that were mentioned in the report. So this is the listed courthouse building that's referred to in the report. This is the Rochester Independent College, which is currently being completed, which has got student accommodation. And then you've got the larger buildings along Corporation Street, larger buildings in Rochester Riverside, which is more built out since this was taken, obviously. And so the site is in the urban area. It's an important regeneration site. And there's a lot of history, and I've I've got a summary of those coming up shortly. And it's so these are the photos coming down Corporation Street. On the left here as it is now, and then this from 2002 when the buildings were demolished. And this is on Bardale Terrace, similar situation, how it looks now, and just a reminder of what the buildings were on site. And then this is Farrells Road. This is the building that's been demolished here. That's the Rochester College, and this is the listed building. And then this is photos of the old railway station parking area, which the supplementary some peer to Style advice said that this could potentially become a public open space. So the development has considered this in the layout of the building that would front this area. This is the photos of the High Street. Again, this is the courthouse, and this is the development site fronting, and it will be visible the High Street. This is the first application that was approved on site in 2019. So you've got a block that fronts Corporation Street. You've got the larger 9 to 10 story block fronting Bardale Terrace, which is here. And then 7 to 9 story Farrells Road. In this one, the Rochester College was actually prior to Rochester College buying the site, and it was actually going to be part of the proposals for houses here. And then you've got this element along the High Street from 6 to 9 stories here, fronting Corporation Street. And this is the site layout of that approval. And note that there's parking here, which will come pertinent later. So these are just the elevations of the buildings. So that's the one that was fronting Corporation Street. This is the buildings fronting Bardale Terrace. These are the buildings fronting the High Street, going round to the Corporation Street with a taller building. It originally did come in for 15 stories, but that was reduced in the negotiations. And then we've got the building fronting Farrells Road. So now we'll move on to the site was sold, and the applicant currently now putting another application 2022. And this shows the massing here. So again, this building on Corporation Street, this was going to be 8 stories, and then you've got the taller element fronting Bardale Terrace. On this section fronting there, it was 11 stories and then 10 stories going back. And then you've got a set of buildings from 9 stories at the back here. And then on the High Street, it rose from 6 round to 10 on this corner of Corporation Street. So here, that parking area that I highlighted before became a public open space and furrow through to work through there. And the proposed application builds further on that, and which is considered a benefit, which you can see later. So then this is just a summary of those elevations. This is the Corporation Street building. There's 8 stories with that setback there. And then this is the front of Bardale Terrace. This is 11 stories, going down to 10 stories all the way across the back to Farrells Road. And then this is on the High Street, so it's 5 stories, stepping up to 7, and then there's that 10 element on this is Corporation Street fronting there. And then this is the block at the rear of Farrells Road. There's 9 to 7 stories. So coming to the actual application in front of you tonight, the applicant has since reassessed the application, and we've through heavy negotiations, we've decided, worked with the applicant to get the best massing solution. So along the major improvement on this application is the High Street building and Corporation Street here. So this has been reduced down to, which we'll see later, to 4 and 6 story. And a realignment of this building allows views to the listed building that I highlighted before. Obviously, this building, you can see previously presented at the back here with 11 and then 10. However, obviously, with this building being lower than previously approved here, they've had to remodel that massing. So you've got 8-story shoulders with 11 stories and then back to 8-story there. And this block has also been reduced. reducing the mass of this high street building has also let that thoroughfare to also have an open square, and that's where the new name of Ironmonger's Yard has come, which will allow amenity area benefit for these 3 blocks, and also have public benefits of access for the public as well. So these are the actual proposed elevations. So this is block fronting Corporation Street, it's 30 flats, and this is where the affordable housing is. It's 6 stories, and it's got plant here which wouldn't be visible setback, but that's where additional stories were put on the previous scheme. That's just the side elevations of those. And this is a comparison. You can see this is 6 stories. You don't have that section above there. And then we go to Block B, which is fronting Forrells Road. So these maps here help you orientate you. So this is what you see fronting Corporation Street. It would be 8 stories here with the 11-storey unit. The applicant has used multiple orientations of roof slopes and pitches to break down the massing. Obviously, the previous one was a lot of flat roofs. So then this is looking on Bardell Terrace, and this would be the 8 stories reduced on Forrells Road. Apologies. So there's the comparison. So you can see the massing was 11 stories on Corporation Street and 10 across, and then it's got 8, 11, 8. And this is the major benefit of the scheme of the reduction on the high street, which is more reflective of the size and scale of the development and the conservation area, which is supportive by Historic England. So you can see it's 4-storey, and then it will rise to 6 as it goes around the corner here. Oh, sorry, there you go. That's the corner, and it rises to 6. And a variation of roof pitches and setbacks to create interest. And then the flank elevations of that block. And then the comparison, you can just see the scale, the significance of the scale reduction from the previously approved scheme to the current one. So you see the 10-storey units here, there's 6 all the way across rather than. And then this is the Forrell Road block. This is 9 stories and 7. Again, a mixture of roof forms to add interest and window setbacks and reveals, etc. And this is the flank. This is the elevation that would front the public yard. Previously, it was a blank facade there, so this is more in keeping with that supplementary guidance document. And again, it's the comparisons of just the massing changed. So if we move to the public realm from the application, along Corporation Street, it's looking to the boulevard, to reinstate the boulevard that's been secured from the other developments here, so tree lines and wider footpaths, so you can see the building line will follow that line. Eventually that will follow if the Royal Mail site were ever to come forward. And then this is the benefits on the scheme here. This Bardell Terrace has been remodelled, and there's a better plan of that later, which I'll show you. But then you can see the street trees going to come all the way around Bardell Terrace, street trees along Corporation Street, street trees along the High Street, and then this is that open amenity square area that's the benefit of the site, the benefit from the design of this site. And there's a CGI of that area. You can see it will be a pleasant place to spend your time. Okay, with regard to highways, the site is in the edge of Rochester town centre, close to the train station, in a highly sustainable location. The application proposes 48 spaces with 2 bays along Bardell Terrace, which would be car club. The application has a focus on sustainable transport with 326 long-stay cycle spaces, a mobility hub, which will include electric bike rentals, cycle repair station, delivery lockers, and live transport information boards, which would encourage the further use of alternative modes of transport. And as I said, Bardell Terrace reconfiguration will also have 2-way cycle lane. The lower parking provision is considered acceptable in general in the area, and the lower car ownership is expected from the proposed tenure. Highways have asked for further restoration works to be undertaken to ensure that there's not significant highway concern impact on the development on nearby streets without controlled parking zones. So there is an significant impact on the highway safety. Officers are confident that the solution could be found without a need to divert from the design of the application, and consequently delegated powers are sought for the continuation of the negotiations between the parties. And delegated powers will allow for the conditions to be amended or additional mitigation so be required. It should be noted that the reduction in parking levels has resulted in the reduction of the scale and mass of the development, the introduction of that central space, amenity space, and moving from more sustainable transport will result in improved air quality and congestion improvements. With regards to crossing, the applicant has designed and tested this crossing in front of you, which is a four-way crossing. It should be noted that this is to be secured by a Section 106 contribution. That's because this is quite a substantial change, and it goes above the need required from the impact of the development. Obviously, this wouldn't, the section, if the other money would have to come from other developments in the area. If they weren't to come, we have negotiated that the crossing would be provided by the applicant, similar to the previous consents from 22 and 19, which would secure the removal of this lane to have the wider footpaths in this area of there, and a separate crossing which relates directly to the blocks that are being presented. This slide also just shows clearly that the improvements coming on Bardell Terrace, which are proposed no matter which options chose, and it's narrower than existing to low speed calming measures, relocation of parking spaces, and there's that two-way cycle facility that's an enhancement. And so here's some materiality information from the documentation submissions. This is the building that's fronting Corporation Street. These are the taller elements. It uses difference of materials and slight design changes in the top and the middle to add variety in the build, and similar aspects onto the smaller element, which would be there on the shoulders. And there's some here of some 3D images of those showing reveals and changes in the material elements. And then this is the materiality of Block A, which use reflection materials to reflect from the adjacent listed building. And again, you've got setback windows to add interest into the elevation. And this is the block would front that public amenity space, potential public amenity space. So here's some CGIs with the comparison of the previous schemes. So that you can see here the lower height on the high street is more reflective of the listed building. The reorientations of the site means you can actually see the tower. You can't see them in these ones here because of the way it was tighter to the road. And that tight was moving back was also allowing more street trees along the high street. And these are CGIs looking down Corporation Street. And so 6 stories here compared to the 10-story towers on the other 2 schemes. And this is the CGI of the Corporation Street building. It's reflective of the vernacular as you come down Corporation Street. And this is CGI looking down Farwell's Road. This element is obviously reduced from 10 stories to 8, so it just is more inviting for people using here. It also should be noted this is the access to Rochester Riverside, and at the end of that there would be public open space as part of that. So it would hope aid movement for people to and from those sites. And then the CGI relationship with the courthouse building and the building adjacent is showing that it's below that height. So with regards to the impact on the historic environment, I've included the HDI heritage town visual impact assessment views for you to look at. So things to note on here, the green lines, which you see here, I'm just highlighting, these are the wire lines of the approved 22 application. And then there's other lines which I've highlighted on here. So in this case, it's red. This increments house was built out. So it's this building here that's being built up. So as you can see on this one, we're going down Corporation Street, you can see the reduction in scale and the impact. Historic England indicated on this, one of the flags, was that you lose the view of Corporation Street. As you come down Corporation Street, you lose the view of Jackson's Field at the back here, but that was always the case, and you can see that the scale has been reduced. This is the view looking on the crossing here. You can see that realignment and getting that view to the listed building, which you can see this green line here, and you see it's reduced everywhere and adding that feature. This is a view coming down Star Hill from the reorientation of the development here. You can see it's less dominant, of fitting in more along here, and you can see that the block on Corporation Street is reduced in height as well. And these are the views going down the high street and into Intra. Again, I highlight this, the previous approved consent is below that everywhere. And this one is, as you move further back in Intra, another thing that Historic England pointed out was there are some losses of the views of Cathedral and Castle. However, the green line just above the blue line is the consented scheme, and they would already lost it. In this situation, there'd actually be more space between the castle and the proposed. And then when you move further back, again, the realignment of this section is improvement. Is another improvement of the scheme. The previous scheme is this green. You'd see that would have blocked this view, but you would just see that over the top of the development now, because the blue is the proposed. So this is looking into down Victoria Street, and this shows the reduction in scales led to the layering of buildings, and this view was worked on really well during the pre-application discussions to try and get the right massing relationship. And you can see the relationship to the approved scheme, which is green. This demonstrates where the massing has been increased really from the previously consented, just from here, from the introduction of pitch roofs instead of the flat roof, and then where you step back down to 10 stories, that's the extra bit there, but it's reduced everywhere else, you can see. And this is a view from Jackson's Field. Again, that green line is the proposed, and it's all the development apart from that area here is below that section, and it's considered to blend better into the background. And this just proves you can't see it from the castle. With this one, this is from Victoria Gardens. So the orange on this one is actually the Bartholomew's phase, which will come forward. But these views just demonstrate whether Block B massing is done. There is some additional height here, but apologies, it's very faint. But the development where it's lower on the high street actually gets the views of the cathedral reinstated. Similar on this one, the massing has a little bit more obscuring of the cathedral from this one, but where it's lower on the high street, you can see the castle. And then this is just the views across from some pier, so the massing is less and very reflective of the last scheme, and similar to Fort Amherst. So Historic England identified a low level of harm, similar to the previous approved scheme, but they support the reduction on the high street blocks and the benefits that has to the conservation areas. Although Historic England did ask for a reconsideration of mass and scale to minimise the harm, and this was already done under the pre-app process, and the level of viability just indicates that there's no scope for further reduction. And when you would consider further reduction, that would mean that mass would have to be then put elsewhere on the lower blocks, and that would ultimately negate all the benefits that the lowering of those blocks have done from the scheme. So the key importance is the securing of materials and the finer architectural details to ensure that it's a quality built scheme coming forward. And that the applicants and Historic England have indicated the importance of that and signing up to working with us to do that too. So ultimately, regarding the heritage, it's considered that the public benefits the provision of a wide range of market, build-to-rent and affordable housing, and bring forward development on previously developed land, introducing a public open space, and to assist the crossing of Corporation Street would outweigh outweigh the low to low end of less than substantial harm in the heritage grounds. Just regarding section 106, you'll notice that there was a viability assessment which meant that the application couldn't provide any section 106 contributions. However, the applicant has agreed to a lower 10% affordable housing provision, and that's going to be on that Corporation Street block. And they also have agreed to that crossing funding as well as bird mitigation. So, as set out in the report, the application is considered in balance acceptable approval, subject to those delegated powers for the finer highways negotiations. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Now move over to Ward Member Councillor Patterson, who has 5 minutes to speak.
Thank you, Chair. I'm here tonight representing the views of many residents who have contacted me directly and also who have submitted objections and comments in the appropriate manner. In addition to that, so I would like to thank those individuals who have given their attention to these applications in their various forms, who have shown how much they care about this area, and so I want to do my best to give voice to their views, also those of the City of Rochester Society and Intrapact, who have requested that I do so. I would declare an interest. I don't think it's a necessary declaration, but I would say that I'm a trustee of the Intra-Community Trust, which has a particular interest in an ambition for the area heading east from Star Hill. So, to summarise as quickly as I can some of the objections, and I'm sure they'll be touched on by members tonight, I think that the primary consideration that people have is the massing, the height, the 11-storey scale of this particular development. And it's been noted by correspondents that the only precedent for buildings even approaching this height is the Rochester Gate development, which I think is certainly the exception and should be the exception rather than the rule. It's built on a sloping site replacing the old cinema. And it's actually a building that I'm sure would be done quite differently were it to be developed, the same site to be developed today. It's a late 80s, early 90s era development that some of it which leaves a lot to be desired, with the greatest of respect to my residents who enjoy a very pleasant life inside Rochester Gate, but then, to be fair, they don't have to look at it from the outside. So I think that's the development which has been used as the justification for the scale. But in the intervening period, there are a number of documents which have been developed which certainly question the building of developments of that scale, including the Rochester Conservation Area Management Plan, building height policy for Medway, and also the Star Hill to Sunpier supplementary planning document. Because essentially the precedent otherwise is that neighbouring buildings, even on Corporation Street, as has been mentioned, are ground plus 5. So that's actually the prevailing height of buildings in this area. In the supplementary planning document, paragraph 2.4.2 requires that heights and massing must not impact on historic views. Now, there's no question that paragraph is breached by the proposal tonight, which would obscure treasured views of the cathedral for some of my residents, the cathedral and the castle, which can be seen from St Margaret's Banks, and of the Green Ridge from Corporation Street. So I do think that the massing has to be questioned, and whether the compliance with these documents is sufficient. Certainly the view of many of my residents is that it isn't. Just before I move on to the crossing, I just want to talk briefly about the wayfinding and interpretation panels mentioned in condition 36, and just requesting that ward councillors can be involved in the development of those so that we can ensure that intra is appropriately and adequately covered by them. So I'm now running out of time, but the Star Hill crossing is I think, the really key part of this, which we need to look at. And in previous iterations of this scheme, when it was known as Bardell Wharf, there was a condition that a suitable four-way crossing had to be set out and approved by planning committee before ground could be broken. We've now got a distinction being drawn by what are described as lesser junction works and the preferred four-way crossing. Lesser is doing an awful lot of heavy lifting there. I think there is really only an acceptable crossing, which would be a four-way crossing, which would deliver safer routes for all, and certainly deal with the impact of this development. But also to point out that the lesser junction works that are being described are, in fact, actually completely unacceptable.
Patterson, that's your 5 minutes.
With your indulgence, could it be
your
permitted
5
one more
minutes.
minute to just complete the...
No, it's 5 minutes and that's it, sorry. Thank you. I now open the floor to members. Any members? Councillor Pearce.
Thank you, Chairperson. Yeah, this is an interesting one. I'm torn on this because I don't actually like any of the three schemes in terms of their design. I don't think any of them, including this one, are in keeping with the conservation area, the historic Rochester, the old city. But they are in keeping with what has been built along Corporation Street with those ugly blocks of flats which have been put there. So I can understand what the developer's doing here. I do prefer this one in terms of its landscaping and the trees. I think that's good, just to soften it. And also the reduction in scale, I think, is a positive one. So I'm torn on this, but I think I have to support it because I want this. I would prefer this one out of the three, to be completely honest. And I did notice one thing which did stand out, which is on the corner block, there are 3 bricked up windows. And I thought we'd abolish the window tax some years ago. I think this has been picked up on other applications across the country where they try and replicate historic features. I thought that was interesting. That's the first thing I spotted on this one. But yeah, I think we have to. Out of the three, yes, it's the best one, but I personally don't like any of them, to be honest, in terms of the design. But I will be supporting it on that basis. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pearce. Councillor Etheridge.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the presentation, and I think you've been more than fair on this. We've gone through various iterations of the plan for this, various meetings, presentations that councillors have attended. And this application before us tonight is far superior to what we've seen in the past. In fact, what is being presented to us tonight is the result of those meetings that councillors attended and put forward their views and actually have been listened to. We've seen a vast reduction in terms of massing and height. We've seen a vast improvement in terms of the public space and on the roadways. And therefore, I can see absolutely no reason why we should object to this. This is something that councillors have already discussed, had their views put forward before the developers. The developers have taken account of that, and they've actually come forward with an application that is far superior and reasonable to what was in the first place. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Galvin.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. yes, to follow on from Councillor Etheridge, this has certainly had quite a number of iterations on this site. I think I've lost count. We've probably seen at least 6, and then 3 that have actually come forward a little bit in more detail. This is certainly a much less bulkier, less blocky aspect to look upon. Unfortunately, to me, the bit that still doesn't work is that the corner of Corporation Street and the High Street. To me, it just looks like an extension that's been built on later. It doesn't seem to fit in with the rest of the buildings, which is a shame. Yes, the architecture is better than we've had before, but unfortunately we don't seem to be able to attract people in Rochester who can give us an outstanding modern building. And one of the gripes I've had for many, many years sitting on this committee is that I still haven't found a building in Rochester that has been built since the Second World War that is of any real architectural merit, and that's a great shame, because Rochester has a huge range of buildings, going from medieval, Georgian, Victorian, even some quite good Art Deco stuff from the last century. But we're running out of sites now, so I think we're going to have to learn to live with what we've got. I think we've also got to reckon that this being a brownfield site, the chances of getting any other economic development on the site is pretty limited. So we've asked for it to be reduced as much as it possibly can, because anything smaller than this, with all the problems associated with brownfield sites, we wouldn't get any development at all. And certainly the plus factors are this is going to go a considerable way to meeting our housing allocation that's desperately needed. It's got a good range of tenure, from social rent, private rent, etc. So I think overall, on balance, this is going to be good for Medway towns. It's once again, it's getting more people living into the town centres, which will give the high street in Rochester a boost for footfall. So overall, whilst yes, the architecture, could have been better, but we can't turn it down on that reason on a whim. So I think overall we've got about as best as we can possibly get with this. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you, Chair. So obviously this is a proposal that's in Rochester, Western Borstal, which is my ward. Just want to flag that the four-way crossing is estimated to cost circa £1 million. However, the S106 contribution is only a fifth of that. So I just want it on record that that is not sufficient from my perspective. That's it, really.
Thank you. Councillor Peake.
Thank you, Chair. I was just following on what Councillor Galvin said. I actually still find some of it a bit too tall, but me not liking it is not a planning consideration. And when you say about the type of build, I think it fits in very well, Rochester. I really like it. I think the way it's been done, it's thoughtful, intelligent, attractive. I love Art Deco, but that's not going to happen. And when I contrast this to back in the day when I was in Redbridge in my first term, and the Conservatives had administration, they went on a tower block building spree, and they completely changed the look of areas right in your face on the edge of roads and, dominating the skyline. And it's like chalk and cheese, the contrast between that type of build and this. So as I support this application, I would also like members obviously commend the process, because obviously this is a very good proof, and especially from what I know, the history that Councillor Etheridge gave us. This shows you how that process of communication, the to and fro, has really worked. And I think it's going to be quite a pleasant addition to Rochester.
Thank you, Councillor Peake. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to ask some questions around, it's actually around the sustainable drainage on the site and the public realm that's being created by this. My questions are, while Southern Water is the utility provider here, can we mandate that there are SUDs in that public realm issue? I don't know whether that's true, whether we can or not. And secondly, who's going to pay to maintain the public realm once the flats are occupied? And my third one is just a comment which I would like to agree with Councillor Hamilton, that I think greater efforts should be made from the developers to support that four-way crossing on the junction. It is a complex junction. There were lots of promises made when we got previous iterations of this given to us, that, you know, the developers recognize the need for that junction to be properly managed, and therefore I think that they should stick to that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Field? No, sorry, Councillor Jones.
Easy mistake to make, Chair. I was just going to ask a question about the provision of affordable housing. As Councillor Galvin said, there is a mix of provision on this site, but 10% seems rather low to me, and I just wondered, presumably that has been the result of a viability assessment, and I just wondered if there were any alternative sources of funding to Section 106 that would have made a difference in this case. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, Tara, did you want to come back on Councillor Brown as well with her questions?
Yeah, I can deal with some, Councillor Brown's questions as well. So, Handley, this landscaping one's still up here. This strip here was like rain gardens, etc. So, sustainable SUDS element, coming forward through the landscaping, which there's some SUDS conditions which will marry with the landscaping conditions. So one of them was the maintenance of these areas. So the areas around here being built up by the developer, and they'll have there are people on site because there's concierges, etc. So they'll be manning the areas, and also there'll be a the part of the build to rent is that obviously the rent will cover the maintenance fees in the area, and that will allow the developer to keep that maintained over time, including all the areas in their red line. So.
Just for clarification, that means the council won't have to adopt it. Thanks.
Yeah, did you want to come back on Councillor Jones?
Yeah, Councillor Jones is one. So yeah, there was a viability challenge. The viability assessment was considered by an independent consultant, and the viability challenge actually said that it was not viable for any affordable housing at all. But the applicants are aware of the need from all the various meetings that we've had with us in the time, and they have therefore taken on the risk to provide that 10%. So I appreciate it's below the 25, which is policy, but that they are going above the viability results to provide, knowing the importance of providing affordable housing.
Thank you. Any other member? Councillor Gilbourne.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, overall, I'm supportive of the application. I prefer reduced massing and height, but the viability is something we've got to take into account. But most of all, I'm just keen to get that site built on. And my question is, do you know from the developer in terms of the time scale that they would go from, spades in the ground to it all be completed? Thank you.
Tom, did you want to come back on that?
They haven't given a timescale, but from all discussions we've had, they're very keen to get going, and this scheme, they will be able to build out, as indicating.
Dave, did you want to come in?
Chairman, just to back up what Tom said, it was a question that members put when they had the presentation from this developers, because they didn't want to be sat here in 2 years' time looking at yet another scheme. So they put that question to developers, and they were reassured that the developers have done their numbers financially on this, and they are keen, as Tom said, to get building as soon as possible.
Any other member? Oh, Councillor Bowen.
Yeah, I'm also quite torn on this. Some of it I really like. The higher rise part I don't, but I don't think on planning grounds we've got any choice on that.
Thank you. Any other member? Councillor Pearce.
Thank you, Chairperson. Just one last comment. I think the CGIs are very useful at these committees, and I very do hope that with these modern planning reforms, which are apparently coming in, that this becomes standard with a lot of these developments. I think they're very, very good. Thank you.
Any other member? No. With this application, I would have preferred it if there was still some 3-bed flats like there was in the previous application, but they've all now been taken out. But I do think, like others have said, this is a lot better design, especially with the reduction in height. So I will therefore be supporting this application. Now moving over to Councillor Jones.
Thank you very much, Chair. Recommendation to give delegated powers to approve, subject to the resolution of the remaining highway parking negotiations to the satisfaction of the Chief Planning Officer, including any required additions or amendments to relevant conditions or clauses in the Section 106, and the completion of a Section 106. A Section 106 agreement as set out 1 to little 3, little 1 to little 3, and the following conditions, recommendations 1 to 47 as set out, with amendments by the supplementary agenda to condition 17, condition 32 and condition 37. With that, I so move, Chair.
Is that seconded?
Seconded.
Thank you, Councillor Bowen. Those for?
That's 14, Chair.
That is therefore approved. Thank you. Oh, Councillor Goldwyn.
Please, Madam Chairman, may I crave your indulgence for a quick comfort break,
yes,
please?
Yes, we can. Yeah.
Happy to second, Councillor Goldwyn.
Thank you kindly.
Moving on with the rest of tonight's Planning Committee meeting. We're now on agenda item 7, the former St John Fisher School, where Nick Roberts, the Principal Planning Officer, will be presenting this application. So over to you, Nick.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. So the next application on the agenda is an application for the former St John Fisher School site in Ordnance Street. So it's for the demolition of the existing buildings and the construction of 139 dwellings with associated access, parking, open space provision and landscaping. So as you can see, we've got the site outlined in red here. I'm going to move on to an aerial image which provides a little more context in terms of the site and its surrounding area. So again, the site outlined in red here. The existing buildings are predominantly located to the north with playing field or the previous playing field and areas of hard standing to the south. To the north, you've got Charles Street and existing residential properties beyond that. Further to the north, you've got Chatham train station, so a short walk from the site. Beyond that, you've also got Chatham High Street and the Chatham intra area with its range of services and facilities, such that the site is very well located in terms of its sustainability credentials. To the east, you've got Ordnance Street, and again, existing residential properties beyond. To the south, Grosvenor Avenue, and to the east, Boundary Road. And although it's not shown on this plan, the new school, the new St John Fisher School site is in this location here off of City Way. And obviously this site is only coming forward as a result of the school's relocation to that new school site. So just touching on the site-specific context, so this is an extract taken from the proposal maps to our local plan. It's a site in the urban area, so in accordance with our own strategic local plan policies, they seek to prioritise reinvestment in the existing urban fabric, and the NPPF also places substantial weight on the use of suitable brownfield land for redevelopment, of which this would be. In terms of as you can see, there is an area, the playing field, and the hard standing area is designated, as you see outlined in green with the dots, as an area of protected open space to which policy L3 applies. Now that policy seeks to resist the loss of protected open space subject to certain exemptions. An assessment of this is outlined in detail within the report, but just to summarise, obviously the school site is vacant, there's no public access to the site. So in terms of obviously the loss of protected open space, well, that has been provided as part of the redevelopment of the new school site. And what I've included here is the proposed, well, not the proposed, it's the school's there, it's operational. This is the site layout of the new school, and what it shows is the extent of facilities that are provided on that new school site. So we've got an all-weather 3G pitch, we've got a football pitch, rounders pitch, there's running tracks, although it's not that clear on the slide. Also a multi-use games area as well here. So in terms of what's being provided on the new school site, it's much improved, and indeed it's within the same catchment area as the existing school site. So moving on to the site photos. So this is a photo taken from Ordnance Street. So this is the existing school building will be demolished. You've also got what I refer to a lower proportion of the site from Charles Street, and again these existing buildings will be demolished. So images taken within the site itself. So this is a photo looking west towards Boundary Road, photo looking north towards Charles Street. So you can see in the distance the existing school buildings. You've got the properties of Boundary Road along here, Perry Street along here, and although not that clear, you can see existing retaining features, and what this shows is the elevated position of the site and how it slopes down from east to west. So there's some challenging constraints in terms of land levels on this site. Again, an additional photo taken along the western boundary, so this is Boundary Road, and an image taken looking south. So you've got the properties along Perry Street here, Grosvenor Avenue in the distance, and again you can see the land level changes throughout the site. And again, just some additional photos taken within the site itself of the existing hard standing areas and the relationship with the adjacent boundaries. The last two photos, they're taken from Ordnance Street, and what they show is, yes, the predominant character of the area is that of two-storey dwellings, but there are clearly examples of larger apartment buildings and buildings of scale. So although as part of the proposals there are 2 apartment blocks, they're not out of character in terms of their scale in this context. So moving on to the proposed site layout. So we've got vehicular access coming in on the lower portion of the site from Charles Street, along a central street that runs north to south. You've got additional vehicular access from Ordnance Street here, which connects up to Perry Street. There's also pedestrian access, again, from Perry Street, from Ordnance Street, from Charles Street around into the open space provision. There's also a pedestrian link in through from Boundary Road as well. So the site's very well connected. There's good permeability. And obviously that's a wider public benefit as well, because what it allows is existing residents access into the site and to obviously the new open space provision that will be provided. There's also a link down from the upper portion of the site to the lower portion of the site, so the site is very well connected internally as well. In terms of the general layout, so we've got the 2 apartment blocks fronting Charles Street here. The rest of the development comprises terrace properties, so 2-storey properties and townhouses with accommodation in the roof space. So you've got terraces here and the terraces running along here, which front the main street. And what you'll see is this very much is in character with the existing urban form and terrace properties that surrounding development, such that it's an acceptable layout and it works well. You've also got a row of terraces in the southern corner, which also bookmark the main street as well. In terms of parking, so a total of 77 parking spaces will be provided. Whilst that would be below our standards do state that allowances for reduced parking will be permitted in sustainable locations, and we think this is very much a site that can support a lower provision of parking, and indeed the level of parking proposed is acceptable. That's subject to a number of mitigation measures which we will be securing either by condition or through the Section 106 agreement, and that includes 2 car club spaces, a travel plan, parking management plan, a restriction on permits for future residents within the CPZs, cycle parking, and also the provision of travel vouchers for each of the dwellings, as again outlined within the Section 106 heads of terms. Touching on amenity, so all units would meet the requirements of the nationally described space standards, and in terms of the level of private amenity space provided for both the houses and the flats, that's all considered acceptable in the form of private gardens and or balconies. And in addition, given the layout of the site and its relationship with the adjacent residential properties, there are no unacceptable impacts in terms of neighbouring amenity either. So just moving on to the proposed house types. So we've got the 1 and 2 bed apartments. So these would front Charles Street. And then we've got the terrace properties. So we've got the 2-storey terrace properties and also the townhouses with the accommodation in the roof space. So overall, we've got a use of buff and light bricks, slates, and varied material palette. The use of brick banding, Juliet balconies. We think, this is a design that adds interest and it's entirely appropriate and acceptable for this site. Just moving on to some sections, this just shows you how it's a section cut through in this direction here, so it would be cut through the open space, and it just shows you the relationship of the site and the levels. So you've got the open space in here, you've got the main street coming in from Charles Street, and you can also see the challenges that the site presents in terms of levels between the lower portion of the site and that upper portion. And again, a section cut through the open space, just so you can see how that would work in practice. So moving on to the CGIs. So this just gives you a feel for how the development could look. So we've got the apartment buildings fronting Charles Street here. You've got the link between the lower and upper portion of the site and how that could look. You've got the main street with the townhouses fronting onto the main street, looking over the open space, and again the terrace formation within the lower part or the southern section of that main street, which very much reflects the urban character of the surrounding area, with the terrace bookmarking the end of that street. And again, just some additional ones about how the open space would work, how it would interact, and how they've managed the levels so that works as an area of open space. And again, in terms of the apartment blocks on Charles Street, how that would look. So you've got the footpath coming in along and how that interacts with the existing street. In terms of the section 106, and as outlined in the report, it has been subject to a viability assessment. Members that attended the training earlier this year will be aware that when developing brownfield sites, it does represent additional costs and risks, and particularly in relation to remediating land, demolition, and also in this case, the challenges in terms of the land levels and the engineering operations that are required to facilitate the development. So this was a joint instruction, a piece of work that was undertaken by Pathfinders, so Martin Aust. So the initial conclusions from their viability assessment were a viable scheme would deliver 700,000 in contributions, but with no affordable housing. However, the applicant recognised that with no affordable housing product, that would not deliver on the council's key priorities and objectives, and indeed our local plan priorities in terms of delivering an affordable housing product. So as a result, the level of contributions has been reduced to 200,000, but what that has allowed is for a provision of affordable housing to be provided as a build-to-rent scheme. This would be offered as an affordable private rent, and that would consist of five units, and these are the larger 3-bed, 5-person units. And the options that were considered are, again, set out in the report, but the option that we've opted for very much reflects the discussions we've had with our housing enabling officer and our housing team, and reflects the need for the larger units within this area. So, in conclusion, the site is in the urban area where the principal development is accepted. We consider this to be a good scheme, which is entirely appropriate for the site and its surroundings. A procedural matter, you'll note that Sport England have objected to the application due to the loss of a playing field. Obviously, our stance on that is, well, the school site has closed, there's no public access, and of course the new school site is providing much improved facilities in that regard. So obviously our recommendation is contrary to Sport England's advice, so therefore we would be required to refer the application to the Secretary of State. The recommendation is also subject to the completion of a Section 106 agreement and the conditions as set out within the report, highlighting members' attention to the supplementary agenda and the addition of a new Condition 19 and the subsequent renumbering of the preceding conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. I now move over to members, starting with Councillor Field.
Thank you, Chairperson. Thank you for the presentation tonight. Just a few thoughts. I think this is the right type of scheme for this environment. I do like the interpretation almost of a Chatham terrace street that is kind of traditional with vernacular. I mean, I'm slightly disappointed there's slightly less colour than was presented previously, but those are minor matters. I'm also pleased to note that there will be 5 family units. I think that is useful. I mean, ideally, we'd like to see a bit more affordable in a location like this, given the needs and challenges of the local area. But it's good to get some larger family units here. I just want to put on record my view that Sports England's objection is a little bit dubious, if I was to say. It's probably an undemocratic word, but considering the fact that, as you set out correctly, the new school provides a change, a new additional sports facility, and to try and have your cake and eat it, I think is a tad ridiculous. This is not an accessible sports area. This isn't somewhere that people use for local teams. This has essentially been under lock and key. There is a provision elsewhere nearby for the school, and I just feel a bit sorry for that poor person in Sport England who had to write the objection, as they have in policy. But thank you for presenting that, and I'm looking forward to supporting this one later.
Councillor Golvin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To follow on from Councillor Field, I think agree with him with sports. It's absolutely ridiculous. And it's not just Sports England. Any organisation that has England as a suffix seem to be full of jobsworths. And I think either this or the next government would do a good thing as taking a scythe to these quangos, because they're just jam-packed full of jobsworths. I think we've got a good scheme here. It's going to be a real boost for the regeneration of Medway. It's going to provide a wide range of homes, and I also agree that it's good to see larger houses being available for social rent, because as I said earlier, we seem to have built loads and loads of 1- and 2-bedroom flats, but we've not built many family-type homes in the last few years. So this is a step in the right direction, and I agree that the terraces all fit in nicely with what's in the rest of the area, and it's just a shame that it's got to go through all this bureaucracy before the actual development can take place, which is a great shame. But no, I think this is a real positive step for this part of Chatham. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Pearce.
Thank you, Chairperson. Yeah, the scheme is nicely designed, and I've got no problems with the proposal itself. The issue I've got is what long-term planning implications there could be here with the removal of the site, which used to be a school and possibly could be a school in the future. Appreciating the fact that the new school is over off City Way now, but considering that, we have to build, or we're told we have to build 30,000 houses by 2040. This is an urban location where space is scarce to do stuff, especially community facilities and services. I don't know if it's been, I assume it's been deemed that we don't need this site for education at the moment, but we might need it in the future. So I'm a bit uncomfortable with the removal of education sites. So I think we might have, I don't want a repeat of what happened in Stroud, where schools were demolished, built on, and then we worked out later that we actually needed sites for some schools. So I don't want that to happen here. So I'm split on this one, but I think in principle I can't support a site which could be education use in the future, which it is which it was up until recently. Thank you.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of points. I like the scheme overall. Can we condition that the 5 3-bed houses come on in the early part of the scheme to get this, so to avoid any doubt that they will be delivered for the purpose that they are intended for? That's my question number one. And is there any way we can condition that they are always C3s and they don't get converted into other, have other classifications on them? Sorry, beg your pardon. So those are my two big questions. And I'm just wondering, why are we giving travel vouchers for a scheme that's right in the middle of a built-up area? I would have thought that managing waste and recycling services would be more important as a sustainability, where people can actually avail of public transport kind of quite close at hand. 3 questions. Thank you.
Did anyone want to come back on those points raised, Nick?
Yeah, no problem. So in terms of your question about C3 to C4 conversions, there is a condition already in the papers, condition number 34, that would prevent a change of use from a C3 use to a C4 use.
But that's only to C4. To
Yes.
any other use, can we make sure that it stays as C3 always?
Well, in terms of what uses are you referring to? Because if it's a change of use requiring permission, then they would be subject to a separate application anyway.
Yeah, but that would be granted because it wouldn't be a planning issue. I'm trying to put a planning condition on this because we have seen an abundance of the loss of reasonable sized family dwellings to supported housing and other issues. And they've all come here and there has been no grounds under planning that we can turn them down.
Chair, if I can just come in there, I understand exactly the point you're saying, Councillor Brown. But as Nick was explaining, there is a condition which removes the permitted development to change to a C4 use. You're quite right that an alternative use would require planning permission. But a condition wouldn't achieve anything more than that. It wouldn't say that you can't put a condition on which says you would never grant planning permission. You can't put such a condition on there. So all you would be doing is saying it requires planning permission, which another use would require planning permission anyway, and it'd be a matter for this committee to assess and determine. Nick, do you want to come back on the other questions? Oh, sorry. The other questions were, in terms of delivery, how quickly will the scheme come forward, particularly the larger properties? Are they in one of the earlier phases? And then the second question was in relation to travel vouchers. On that, maybe I can answer that and you can correct me, Nick. On the travel vouchers one, because there's a limited car parking on the site below the standards, as Nick explained. That's why we felt that travel vouchers would help to encourage things. In terms of that assessment, in terms of the waste, because this is a build to rent, they will be. It's in their own interest to deal with the waste. We didn't feel that was quite so important as the travel vouchers in this instance. Nick, do you want to come on the phasing?
Yeah, in terms of securing the five affordable private rent units, yes. So what we can require is a marketing plan to come forward as part of securing that obligation. So that will set out obviously the terms of the affordable private rent units and how they will subsequently be delivered.
Thanks for that. I'm a bit concerned. I've seen applications come in the past with commitments for things to be built, and when we get down further on the scheme, something happens and they're not quite delivered. I'm not saying that this developer is going to do that. All I'm saying is I would like us to be minded to that.
Councillor Pearce.
Thank you, Chairperson. Just to Fenn Sports England a bit, you know, in my ward we've lost playing fields, we've lost a big sports field off of Elm Avenue in Chatham, we've lost a big sports field at the top of Bells Lane. So, you know, I appreciate their comments because once they've built on, they've pretty much gone, and it's very difficult to bring them back. But I appreciate the point that obviously this one's not accessible because the site's been closed. But I think they should be given some due that their interest is obviously protecting sports fields. Thank you. Or sports areas. Thanks.
Any other member? Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you, Chair. So my question's a bit of a relief question. Obviously, this is quite a curvy site, and I'm just wondering what considerations have been made to ensure that it's as fully accessible for all people, regardless of their mobility needs across the entire design. Thanks.
Nick, did you want to come back on that?
Yeah, so I appreciate what you mean in terms of obviously the site itself and the level changes, but there would be provision to allow connections between the upper and lower portions of the site for those with prams, for those with disabilities in wheelchairs as well. So what we're not doing is segregating the upper portion from the bottom portion. There would be provision to allow access to both sections of the site, and of course the important open space which is located within that lower section.
Thanks. You know, it's just looking at the CGI image, it wasn't clear whether that was just a stepped area or whether there was actually other means to access the green space.
Yes, there would be, yeah. And obviously as part of the landscape plan that would be submitted, obviously those details would be included within them.
Thank you. Councillor Nang.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My question is about where will waste be stored and how will it be collected? Will it be done privately or will it be done by the council?
So there are conditions associated with refuge storage, so within the flats, and also within obviously the private, well, the dwellings as well. And it would be the council that would be collecting the waste. And there's within the section 106 there is a contribution that would cover obviously the cost of waste removal and recyclables from the site.
Any other member? Oh, sorry, Councillor Annan.
Where would the waste be stored before it will be collected? Because most of the time in site flats, it becomes an issue when it comes to waste storage. So
there would be secure bin storage within the apartment blocks and also within the dwellings themselves. So it would be secure.
Any other member? No? Okay, so with regards to the car parking spaces in this application, it does concern me, but I'm quite happy with the measures that have been laid out on page 124, which also includes the car club spaces. And it's also quite disappointing with there only being 4% of affordable housing, but if the money isn't there to provide it, it's not there. Because it does cost a lot more to build on brownfield sites. So, and I think it is important that this is built on, and we are in desperate need of housing in Medway, so I will therefore be supporting this application. Now moving over to Councillor Jones, Vice Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Chair. The recommendation is approval subject to the following. A, referral to the Secretary of State in view of Sport England's objection. B, the applicant entering into a Section 106 agreement, which shows little a, the 5 units for the affordable private rent, little b, to operate all 139 housing units under a build-to-rent scheme in perpetuity, and little c, the financial contributions, little 1 to little 5, and conditions 1 to 36 as set out, the 1 to 36 being because there's an additional condition 19 in the supplementary agenda. So it's the 35 conditions shown in the report plus the 1 in the supplementary agenda. With that, I so move, Chair.
Is that seconded?
Seconded.
Thank you, Councillor Bowen. Those for?
That's 13, Chair.
Those against?
That's 1.
The application is therefore approved. Thank you. So now move on to item 8 on the agenda, the performance report. Chief Planning Officer Dave Harris will be presenting this, so over to you, Dave.
Chair, thank you very much. Usual quarterly report for members. It's as always, it's a good report, but it's an exceptional one in this case. This shows the applications submitted and determined for the first 6 months. If we look at that over the next 6 months, we will be around about 2022-23 figures. So things are improving in terms of number of applications submitted. Major applications, this is our performance against the national targets. The national target is there. You will see that in terms of applications not subject to an extension of time, 100%. And applications subject to an extension of time, again 100%. So it's really good. Minor applications, again well above the target. Incredible performance by the officers there, and similarly with other applications, well above the target. In relation to fees, we've had a few bad years in relation to fees, but you can see here that in terms of this year, fees have picked up. So although planning application numbers are not to the level they were a few years ago, we are getting big applications in, so our fees are looking good. So that's good for my budget. Planning applications determined within the statutory time frame. That shows that our performance is very good compared to other authorities for all categories of applications. This shows those in relation to where there is an extension of time, and again our performance is good, and where, and this is the total number of applications determined in time, again performance is good compared to other authorities. This table here shows a number of things, and this is something that the previous government brought in. It's comparison tables. So the first table here, comparing us to the rest of Kent, is percentages of decisions granted, around about 90%. That's not unusual. This one here, percentage determined with an extension of time. Now you look for a relatively low figure there because it shows that you're dealing with things majority within the statutory time period, and at 20%, that's quite a good performance. Major applications determined within 13 weeks, which is the statutory period. We're at 39, and again, you would be looking for a higher percentage there, and you'll see there are some authorities with a higher percentage. But the difference is we receive bigger applications, and with bigger applications, they require Section 106s, and when you have Section 106s, it's difficult to get them determined in 13 weeks. So that figure is a reflection of the scale of the applications that we deal with compared to some other authorities. And then non-major applications determined within 8 weeks, performance is really good. Household development determined within 8 weeks, exceptional performance there. Appeals, we still receive our appeals where we refuse decisions. And then this shows that in terms of appeals allowed compared to appeals dismissed. And then those that are split. Inspectors can make split decisions, which we can't. So the inspector in this case allowed part and dismissed part, so effectively is agreeing with us, and that should count as a dismissed appeal for this benefit. So that shows performance is fairly good. Now, there's no statutory figure for appeals in terms of the maximum number of appeals that you should have overturned. Having said that, if we as a council were to refuse more than 10% of our applications, if we were to have allowed an appeal more than 10% of the number of applications we received, then we'd be put in special measures. And you'll see from the report, we're nowhere near that figure. We're around about 2% for majors and about 1% or so for other applications. We're still having a number of allowed, and we'll go through that in the next report. Prior approvals, you know what I feel about some permitted development schemes. Units under construction, members, you've heard reference a number of times from other members tonight. We've got a housing crisis, we've got a high housing need. So we look at the number of units under construction, and you can see that the efforts that we as an authority and you as members and we as officers are going through to increase house building in members in Medway is helping. We had a really good year, well, we've had a number of good years there in terms of units under construction. In terms of reflecting that in terms of delivery, we've had some very good years there. Slight downturn in 22-23, but hoping that will pick up again when we get the AMR out later this year. This shows how, in terms of housing completions, we compare to other homes, other authorities in Kent. Enforcement, credit to Pete and the way he's running the enforcement team. It's important. I mean, we don't want people to breach planning control, but it's important that if they do and it's unacceptable, we strongly react to that. The PPG encourages us to try and negotiate and to get a resolution without formal enforcement action. but we're not frightened to take formal action, and it demonstrates to people out there, if you do undertake unauthorised works and you don't resolve it satisfactorily, we will take action, and that's demonstrated particularly in these yellow figures here for that quarter. And as I said, Pete's leading the team on that. Complaints still remain coming in. We deal with in the team TPO applications, tree preservation applications, currently using a consultant to process them. There's a lot of applications that we receive for those. Flood Authority, Gabby is in my team, does an amazing job considering that there are meant to be two officers and there's just her. So she does an incredible job, as you can see there from her performance. In relation to complaints, we work in an environment where people are going to be unhappy with planning, as we saw in the last planning committee. If we approve things, the objectors don't like it. If we refuse things, the applicants don't like it. So we do get a lot of complaints. The majority are happy once they get it explained why we've made the decision that we have. There are some that take that through to stage 2, and there are some that take that through to Ombudsman. In relation to this quarter, there were 3 decisions by the Ombudsman. The first was closed because the Ombudsman said, well, you've got right to appeal, don't come to me. The second was closed because the Ombudsman was satisfied that we'd taken appropriate action. The third found fault with us on the basis that we had not taken enforcement action quickly enough. I actually disagree with the Ombudsman's decision in that role for a number of reasons. We have an enforcement policy which sets out a priority where we say that those cases which are having the greatest harm, we will focus on and we will place our priority on. Those which have lesser harm become further down the ladder. In the instance of this one, it was one which has a limited harm. We were always going to take action, but it was just a lower priority. In addition to that, the original case officer left the authority, got another job somewhere else. We reallocated, and that enforcement officer went off sick and subsequently left. So I had 2 officers who were dealing with it who left. It takes time to recruit, and that causes delays. I couldn't reallocate because those other officers were dealing with the higher priority cases. So you can see why I'm a little bit disappointed with the Ombudsman's decision in that instance. But members, the last thing I draw your attention to, page 156, there are a lot of compliments as well in relation to my staff. I draw members' attention to those. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Dave. Any member? Councillor Golvin.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. I think, Dave, you and your team will be congratulated from those performance statistics are really, really good. It's the indication of what a good planning department we're lucky to have here in Medway. Also, congratulations on getting ISO 9001. Having, in my last, when I had a proper job, having to go through getting the ISO 9001 accreditation, it was a very heavy task because you're still got to do the day job at the same time, and to write all your practices out, to get your best practice documents in place is a tremendous amount of work. But I'm glad you've done it because what it did lead to, I found, was a consistent performance because everybody knew what was expected for every task. So that was a really good thing. The only thing I did find in the report that on page 135, paragraph, hang on, the thing's gone dark on me, paragraph 4.14, I have got alarm bells ringing at that. It's not particularly long, but I'll read it out. As part of the reform of the planning system, the government are focusing on planning committee decisions, with the Planning Inspectorate being asked to start reporting to government about cases where a successful appeal is being made against a planning committee decision contrary to the officer recommendation. The overturning of a recommendation made by a professional officer should be rare and infrequent. The government have reminded the Inspectorate that where it cannot find reasonable grounds for the committee having overturned the officer's recommendation, it should be consider awarding costs to the appellant. I think that is getting us into a very difficult position. That is a firm attack by the central government on local democracy. I don't think this committee, and I've sat on this committee for a long, long time, makes its decisions lightly. When we have turned things down against officers' recommendations, and they've often held up at appeal, it's been done after a lot of due consideration. And I think it's not right for central government to interfere. They are trying to micromanage from Whitehall, and we all know where that leads. It won't work. And I think this is a very serious matter, and I think all members should be well aware, and those in the administration, I think, should be taking it up with your MPs, because where else are we going to be going? This is virtually making this planning committee in the future redundant, because if we don't rubber stamp the officers' decisions, and we do occasionally disagree with the officers, but particularly where there is a balanced decision. And it's very, a lot of these things are not black and white by any stretch of the imagination. There's, enormous shades of grey in there. So, and I think members should have the last say, because otherwise, what are we elected for? I think this is really, the thin end of a wedge. I'll be interested to see if we get any more of those. The other thing, just to look on the graph you had with the income, Dave, because we're in such a tight financial position now, and it bears on from what I've just been saying a moment ago, it would be good to have what is the gap between what our income and our expenditure, because that will give us a better feel as to how yes, it's good to know we've got a good income coming in, but is it covering the expenditure? And that's something as members I think we should be able to keep an eye on. But overall, apart from the shock of reading that, I think it's a wonderful report, and again, well done to you and all the team. It's a splendid performance. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Goldwyn. Dave's just going to come back on that now.
Chair, thank you very much. I don't disagree with anything that Councillor Goldwyn has said. It refers to government. It's both the previous government and this government have said that. It's one of those instances, Chair and members, where I think we're potentially being penalised for difficulties at other authorities. This committee and members have agreed delegated powers to me to determine the majority of applications, so that only those applications which are significant or controversial come to this committee. And I think that's right. For all the reasons that Councillor Goldwyn has said, and I'm going to use the word, I think I'm blessed to work for this authority, and this committee has consistently been really good in terms of processing of assessing the applications, and as Councillor Goldwyn says, you don't overturn recommendations lightly. So I back up everything you say, Councillor Goldwyn. It's not a criticism of this authority and this committee. There are one or two authorities in the country who it's a criticism of, and we're all potentially being penalised for that.
Thank you, Dave. Any other member? Councillor Gilbourne, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just a big thanks to Dave and his team for some really fantastic results. Just a quick question about the completions, but also the work in progress. What are the stats looking like for 2024 so far? Are they likely to be more than 2023?
From what I can see, yes, as you say, Councillor Gilbourne, there was, if I can find it, there was a slight downturn there, 22-23, compared to what we'd been seeing the previous 3 years. Having said that, if you look at those, the units under construction, that would suggest that the completions is going to be back up again this year. I'm still waiting for the figures to come out, but I'm hoping that there is that increase again.
Any other member? Councillor Pearce.
Thank you, Chairperson. Yes, we're averaging just over 1,000 homes a year, which is quite a considerable feat when you think about it. You know, Rochester Riverside is 1,400 houses, so we're practically building a Rochester Riverside at least one and a half years. You know, so we get told, the planning authority gets told by the developers, you're not building enough houses, so can you please, to the inspector, can you please approve my application because the authority's not building enough houses? But that's not true looking at these figures. There's quite a lot of houses, you know, and it's not far off from this target which is imposed upon us. And of course, if the authority could choose its own target, obviously based on evidence still, if you look at the options, I can't remember what document it's from, but there was a table, we would actually be meeting our own targets quite easily. It's just that this government-imposed target is the challenge, and that's the stick which the developers use when they go to inspectors and say, overturn the refusal, please. Thank you.
Any other member? No. I'd also like to extend my thanks to your team, Dave, you and your team. Thank you. And now I'll move over to Councillor Jones, Vice Chair.
Thank you, and I would like to second the congratulations to the Chief Planning Officer's staff. I shouldn't do this from the Vice Chair, but on the last comment that Councillor Pearce has made, it's a tremendous opportunity to have a local plan, of course, which would enable us to have control over the appeals and the other things that spin from not having a local plan. But what I will say is this report is presented to the Planning Committee, informing members on current planning performance and the local plan. Oh, sorry, I'm reading the summary, not the recommendations. I was so carried away by commenting on Councillor Pearce's comments. The Planning Committee is asked to consider and note the report, which is submitted to assist the committee in monitoring planning activity. And that is what I move, Chair.
Is the report seconded?
Seconded.
Oh, those for?
That's 13, Chair.
Those against? Right, the report is therefore approved. Now we're going to move on to item 10 on the agenda, the report on, is it, am I on the right item? Appeals, sorry, yeah, item 9 on the agenda, the appeals decisions. Over to Dave, Chief Planning Officer, who's going to present this.
Chair, thank you very much. In terms of appeal decisions, we just report those ones which have been overturned, or those ones where members have made a decision contrary to officers, and that has gone to appeal. So what we've got here is 55 Marlborough Road, Gillingham, which was it's two appeals, one in relation to enforcement and one in relation to a planning refusal. In relation to enforcement, because what they did is they got planning permission for some flats. What they built wasn't in accordance with the approved plans, constructed more units. We took enforcement action. On that appeal, the inspector picked up a technicality that we were saying that the flats were effectively occupied, and the inspector said, well, at the time that we served the enforcement notice, that they weren't occupied, although they were clearly built, so he quashed the notice. In relation to the planning refusal, he agreed with us, and the appeal was dismissed. And the reason for that, although generally happy with the block of flats here, and it's quite appearance-wise, it's not too bad, but the inspector agreed with us that there were some windows on the side elevations here which caused some overlooking of the property at number 67, and they needed to be either obscure glazed or some form of limiter there to direct the view in an alternative direction. We're now working with the applicants to resolve those issues. And to the applicants' credit now, they're using a different planning agent and are working better with us, is probably the best way to put it. Then the second one is the same developer at 89 Ingram Road. Got planning permission for a development there, 2 blocks. Didn't build it in accordance with the approved plans. The first block was, and was then sold to the council for affordable homes. But the second block in here, externally, in terms of footprint and height, was in accordance with approved plans, but in terms of internal layout, wasn't. Additional units were installed. We felt it was harmful to neighbours in the area. We served an enforcement notice. The inspectorate made the decision that there was only one issue that they wanted they felt was unacceptable, which related to car parking, and whether there was sufficient car parking on site, and if there wasn't, whether that would cause unacceptable car parking pressure in the surrounding area. At the appeal hearing, the applicant put forward a plan we hadn't seen before, which showed an additional car parking area, or one additional space. The inspector felt that one additional space did make a difference and effectively allowed the appeal subject to the car parking on site being amended to provide for that additional space. Then we get to Ravenswood Avenue. This was an application to change a bungalow to a chalet bungalow and to put an annex in the back garden. We didn't have a problem with the annex, but we did have a difficulty with the design of the extensions to the property. The inspectorate gave a split decision on this. They allowed the annex. We didn't have a problem with the annex either, but we can't make split decisions. But this was what was proposed at the front, and the inspector agreed with us that it's unacceptable and dismissed the appeal. And then the final one relates to a hard standing area, a crossover and hard standing area for this property. So that's what's currently there, proposed to be to have this dug out as a hard standing. The inspector agreed with us that it would be harmful to the street scene, but felt that because the occupier was that had special needs in terms of a disability, that those special needs outweighed the harm and allowed the appeal. I can understand that, but all I would say is that will be there forever, when the special needs sadly won't necessarily be. So I've seen inspectors make different decisions to that, but in this instance, the inspector allowed the appeal. And that's that report, Chair.
Thank you, Dave. Councillor Peake.
Yeah, just clarification, because I agree with your last comment, and I support people's special needs and appreciate that such a scenario. What was it they changed that green area to? Was it the whole thing, or was it just making sure there's a slope there? So presumably somebody possibly in a wheelchair usage?
Chair, no, they dug it, or will be digging up the whole of that area. So, so you can see that they'll be putting retaining wall around, creating a hard standing for a car.
Okay, then it just seems a bit extreme, but
effectively on that area.
I said it just seems a bit extreme, and like you say, it'd be there forever. Okay.
Any other member? Councillor Golvin.
Yes, on that one, I've only just spotted it, but on the plans where you show the car parked in the dugout place, I can't see any drainage on that. So all that water that's collected on that hard stand will go across the pavement into the highway and overload the storm drain. So I'd like to see a French drain there. Because certainly in my own ward, we've had numerous properties over the last few years flooded out, and it doesn't get much higher in Medway than Darget's would, and it's the last place where you'd think you'd ever get flooding, but we do quite regularly. And in my view, the main cause of that is that there's so many front gardens being paved over without any means of proper drainage, and it's finding the lowest point, which unfortunately in places like Mackenzie Road is some person's living room. So I wonder if we could just issue, it might be just the details, not on the drawing, but it, you know, if we're going to have this thing, at least it should be done properly.
Thank you. Any other member? And then move over to the Vice Chair, Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. And the recommendation is that the committee is asked to consider and note this report, which is submitted to assist the committee in monitoring appeal decisions. I so move.
Is the report seconded?
Seconded.
Thank you, Councillor Bowen. Those for?
That's 12, Chair.
The report is therefore approved. Now moving on to agenda item 10, a report on section 106 agreements. Chief Planning Officer Dave Harris will also be presenting this one, so over to you, Dave.
Thank you, Chair. So you've got a report in front of you, members. On Appendix 1, you've got Section 106 funding received in the quarter. Appendix 2 is Section 106 is signed in the quarter, and Appendix 3 relates to the habitat regulations. So a lot of hard work done by my officers, my Section 106 officer, and the legal officer as well, who rarely gets a mention in here, so I thought I'd mention her.
Thank you. Any member? Councillor Pearce.
Thank you, Chairperson. Just a quick comment on the Section 106 received 212612, which is the Hollies and Southview Charnel Street High House. So improvements to sustainable transport provision within Medway, 50% of contribution, which is 38,000. I would like that to be spent specifically in the area closest to the development. And I think a good idea would be to potentially spend that on the bus stop and also the footpaths to that bus stop coming off of Charnel Street, so people can have a nice an attractive walk from the development, and a suitable walk as well. They can actually walk the road safely, walk the footpath safely to that bus stop and use that transport provision, because the only sustainable modes of transport on the peninsula really are buses or taxis or shared car use. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other member? Now move over to Vice Chair Councillor Jones.
Thank you very much, Chair. The recommendation is the committee is asked to consider and note the Section 106 funding received, those Section 106 agreements signed during the period July to September 2024, and habitat regulations contributions as set out in Appendices 1 to 3. I so move.
Is that seconded?
Seconded.
Thank you, Councillor Bowen. Those for the report?
That's 12, Chair.
Right. The report is approved. Now moving on to item 11 on the agenda, exclusion of the press and public. Is it agreed by members that the press and public are excluded from agenda item 12 for reasons laid out in the agenda? There's those watching online as well. So is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you.